Hey nature photographers, it's Lee Hoy, and I am actually here at home in West Texas. I make my home in the Davis Mountains, about 2 hours north of Big Bend National Park, at an elevation of about 6,400 feet, and it's March. It's taken me since November to get back here. I love where I live. It's peaceful. As you can see, I have some incredible scenes around me. It's just chock full of great wildlife, but it's also March. And you might notice behind me there's an observatory. And March means it's the beginning of Milky Way season. And I thought it'd be fitting to do a video to help you out with some of the tips, tricks, and techniques for getting Starry Sky autofocus honed in, how to really make it accurate, how to use it reliably, and some of the things I like to do to help me make sure that I acquire focus in a proper way. So here's the plan, okay? We're going to first take a look at the menu, and we're going to walk through some of the important aspects of the menu and things that can help. And then about 5 miles that way is the Raven flies, and it's the Raven because we don't have crows out here, is a state park called the Davis Mountain State Park, and there's a beautiful overlook. So we're going to go in and take a look at the menu, then we're going to head over to the state park, and we're going to do some real world videos showing you how to do night sky photography using Starry Sky autofocus. So without further ado, let's hop in, take a look at that menu, and then let's hit the road. Howdy from West Texas. I'm Lee Hoy, professional nature photographer, and this is my YouTube channel, Lee Hoy Photography. I'm an OM System Ambassador, photography workshop instructor for Wildside Nature Tours of Precision Camera and Video, and contributing author for the Journal of Wildlife Photography. All right, we're back in the house now. I am going to get my camera set up for Starry Sky autofocus and walk you through some of the different settings that I like to use to improve Starry Sky autofocus accuracy in particular. So first thing we're going to do, let's jump into the menu. I'm already on the autofocus menu tab, main menu tab, which is in green. And page 1, autofocus. At the very top, you'll see the autofocus mode. Now, when we go into autofocus mode, we have a choice of course, single autofocus, continuous, manual, continuous autofocus tracking, pre-manual focus distance, and then Starry Sky autofocus. And that's represented by the little star with the 4 corners and AF/MF. And the reason it says AF/MF is because I always have autofocus plus manual focus turned on, so that if for some reason in any situation my autofocus just isn't nailing it, I can always tweak it with manual focus. And I'll do another video at some point talking about manual focus settings like focus peaking and focus indicator, things like that. All right, so that's why you see a Starry Sky AF plus MF. Honestly, with focus peaking, manually focusing with some lenses, you can see the outline around the stars depending on the lighting conditions. Sometimes I see it fine and sometimes I don't. And you know what? I'm getting older and my eyes are just not as good as they used to be. So let's go down to the next setting we're going to work on, which is Starry Sky autofocus setting. So I'm going to press the OK button to enter into that menu item. And you have 2 options here at the very top for autofocus priority. You have accuracy, and just like you would think, that means the camera's going to put more emphasis on accuracy. If you choose speed, I have a question. If you're doing night sky photography, why are you in a rush? That is the one form of photography that you generally should never rush. You generally have plenty of time to get set up. If you are rushing, you probably didn't plan your whole outing very well. So clearly for me, accuracy for night sky photography reigns supreme over speed, which would reign a little more important for me on wildlife photography. Now the next thing, you have several options under autofocus operation. For those of you that still insist on front button focus for whatever crazy reason, then you would want to select this. You're going to start autofocus when you half press the shutter button. You're going to stop by letting go. You got your hand on the camera. If you're not steady, if you're moving it around, for me, there's nothing good that comes out of using the shutter button for focus in any situation, particularly night sky photography. Now you can put it on the next one, which is autofocus on, which is the button that I use for back button focus. The problem is, again, you have to hold it down and then it's going to stop focusing when you release the button. Okay, I have a system that I think works much better, because the problem is, for a lot of night sky photography and other things, I'm often in areas where my camera is very low to the ground. it's in a position that's not convenient to put my finger on the button. And I don't want to have to continue to hold the focus button, whether it be the shutter button or the AF on button. So I really like the third option, which I just press the autofocus on AF on button, and it starts the autofocus. And even when I let go, it's going to continue to work. Okay, I can stop it by pressing that button again. But here's what I have a combination with that I think will help you a lot when it comes to knowing that you've secured autofocus on the stars. You know, that tip is about using something. I'm gonna skip over. I'm gonna back out for a second, and it's going to be under our setup menu, which is the wrench, the pink wrench, and it's going to be on menu page 3, monitor sound connection. You know the little annoying beep that people often turn off because we certainly don't want it on, wildlife, or it could potentially scare wildlife. I don't really use it for macro, but I did start using it for landscape and night sky in particular, and here's why. So this funny little symbol right here is the beep, the focus beep. And it looks like a little box emanating sound. It looks like a speaker or whatever, but it is. It's the beep when autofocus is acquired. Again, we don't want that on for wildlife. Really don't need it for macro. But when I'm doing night sky photography, I have a system that works great because my camera, I'm often near cactus out here in Big Bend. I've sometimes want to take night sky shots with rattlesnakes in the scene or whatever it might be, and I don't want to have my hand on the camera for a variety of reasons. I just don't, other than starting autofocus. Well, so I turn the beep on, okay? Now, the reason being is that means, there's a little green dot on the LCD that pops up when focus is acquired. And for night sky photography, I dim the brightness of my viewfinder of my LCD so it's not affecting my night sky vision, okay, my night vision. I don't want to have to stare at the back of my screen watching for this tiny little green circle that pops up momentarily because I'm often talking to clients or I'm enjoying the night sky. I don't want to be staring for that. The beauty of turning on the autofocus beep is I start autofocus by just pressing autofocus on, letting go, okay? And then I just sit and listen for a beep. And if I don't get that beep, I know it couldn't find autofocus. So that's another tip on how to listen for autofocus being acquired instead of looking for the silly little beep. So let's go back to our main autofocus tab, and I use the front dial to get there quickly. So again, under Starry Sky autofocus setting, I want accuracy for my autofocus priority. For autofocus operation, I want AF on start stop. I don't want to keep my hand long term on my camera. And release priority, this is very important. I do not want to take a picture for night sky photography if focus hasn't been acquired. So by leaving it off, that means the shutter cannot be released until focus has been acquired, okay? So that prevents me from taking out of focus images. If you put it on, I leave it on for wildlife photography. I do not for night sky. We're taking longer exposures. I don't want to waste that time on taking stupid out of focus images. Now, a lot of beginning photographers say, well, why don't you just put your lens on infinity and leave it there? Because infinity varies based on temperature, humidity. It's not a smart way to try to get focus on the stars. It just won't work. So you don't want to just slide your zoom all the way out. Slide your autofocus all the way out and think that you've acquired focus on the stars. Odds are very good that you do not have focus on the stars, okay? So release priority is going to be off, and that's a very important setting. So we'll get that set. Now we'll press the menu button to go back, okay? And those are the key autofocus settings for night sky photography. Now, if you're doing back button focus, you want to make sure that you've turned AF by half pressing the shutter button off. That means both of these will be set to no, because if you are trying to do back button focus and you're pressing that back button and then you press the shutter button, take a picture, it's competing. It's going to try to focus again, and that will screw you up. So let's take a minute and go to a couple other sections that we need to be aware of. If you do choose to go to manual focus, okay, Under manual focus assist, you're going to want to turn peaking on, okay? And then for night sky photography, I'm going to turn magnify on so I can zoom in on a star. So you'll learn how to maneuver the magnify box, and I'll do a separate video on this later about moving the box around so you can actually see what you're trying to manually focus, which star. But you're going to want that on. A lot of people don't like the focus indicator. I do, and I'll talk more about that another time. So all three of these are going to be on for me for night sky, okay? Now under peaking settings for night sky photography, I really recommend leaving that peaking color on red. It's going to show up the best. Okay, you could say highlight intensity. You could use high. That's going to help it stand out more. Okay, all right. So those are a couple of tips I'd recommend if you end up needing to use manual focus on the stars. You know, with Starry Sky autofocus, I just generally don't have to do that. I generally leave my CAF sensitivity on around 0 for Starry Sky autofocus. I don't want it to be too aggressive, and I don't want it to be too conservative. You know, I kind of like a balance on that for my night sky photography. I generally haven't had to tweak CAF sensitivity. I always have really good luck with Starry Sky autofocus. Now, I tend to do this only in really dark skies. It might be interesting to see if you were to shoot in more light polluted areas, what the CAF sensitivities may do in terms of helping you acquire. Like if the stars are a little dull, maybe going with a higher CAF sensitivity might help. But again, I don't tend to shoot in light polluted areas. I don't tend to enjoy looking at those kind of images. All right, so now we've got our settings ready for Starry Sky autofocus to help us get rolling. And you know, when you're using Starry Sky autofocus, oops, I meant to go into the super control panel. You're only going to have an option of large, small, middle, okay, for your autofocus boxes, point areas. So what I do is I'm going to move my autofocus point around so that I can put it wherever the brightest stars in the sky are in my particular view. So you can use your directional pad to move the box. You can use the joystick around. So either one of these options, the joystick or the directional pad, is going to help you move and find the brightest stars. So just a couple of things to keep in mind when using Starry Sky autofocus. This only works with Olympus or OM system lenses. So if you've gone out and bought a wide angle Panasonic or other type of lenses, non-OM, it's not going to work with them. So that's one of the big benefits of purchasing an OM system lens. As well, other autofocus related settings like orientation linked, the autofocus scanner, autofocus limiter, loop settings, a few things like that are going to be automatically turned off, okay? You don't have an option of using those. And also, you don't want subject detection turned on, so by default, the camera turns subject detection off. The frame rate, which I use for high for wildlife, macro, will automatically be set to normal for Starry Sky autofocus. Most people wouldn't even think about that. No problem, the camera's going to fix that for you. Hopefully it goes without saying that autofocus Starry Sky cannot be used if you can't see stars. So if you have a very cloudy day and you're trying to photograph gaps in them, wait until you have some like at least one dominant star available. And I'll show you a little test I did outside later. And hopefully it goes out saying that you cannot use Pro Capture mode with Starry Sky autofocus. That would be a bit silly. And any lens that that the minimum aperture is 5.6 or larger, it's not going to work with that. And that lens is pretty useless for night sky photography to begin with. So keep that in mind. And when focus is acquired, the only way to visually note that, other than the image kind of looking sharp, which can be very difficult to tell sometimes with night sky photography, is that green dot in the lower left corner of the viewfinder or the monitor. That again is why I like to turn on the audible beep for autofocus acquisition. Well, now that I'm ready to shoot, I am going to take my trusty OM1 Mark II here. And you can see I've got a lens collar that I'll do a video about later. And I'm going to take my PhotoPro E6L tripod and we're going to hit the road and go do some night sky photography. All right, guys, I'm up here at a beautiful overlook in Davis Mountain State Park out here in West Texas. The town of Fort Davis, where I live, is nearby. Nice, windless night. We got a few clouds in the sky, but there's some stars showing. Now it's March, the Milky Way is way down low. Fairly moonlit night, so my foreground will have some nice light on it, but it does make it a little more difficult for some of the stars. Now what you're going to see is, right now my image is very out of focus. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my autofocus box to a place in the sky where I can tell there's a lot of stars. And now I have back button autofocus on, set to start my focus. So I'm going to press that button and autofocus is going to start running. Now you see up in the upper left of my screen, it says Starry Sky autofocus is running. And remember, we have it set to accuracy. So we're going to let that run. And now, did you hear that beep? That's what I love. Now I know my focus is set. I'm ready to take my picture, okay? And I am going to see how my settings start out right now for a moonlit night. Let's run this. All right, let's take a look at our exposure. Let's see how that one does. Yeah, that's a little better. Again, very bright moonlit night. So you can see we're getting some movement in the clouds, which is kind of neat. All right, guys, so you see down here at the bottom my focus indicator. A lot of people would think if I just move my focus to infinity, everything will be sharp, but that is simply not the case. What you see here is definitely can tell things aren't very good focus because the lights from town, which is Fort Davis. I'm out here at the Davis Mountain State Park, one of my favorite places out here in West Texas, not far from where I live. But you'll notice that the skies aren't sharp, so we can't just move our lens to infinity. Infinity varies by temperature, humidity, many other factors. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to use Starry Sky autofocus, and I have a large autofocus point configuration. I'm going to move it up here where I know there's some stars. I'm then going to press the AF on button, the back button focus, and I'm going to start focus going. Now we're going to listen for the audible beep confirmation, and we're going to be able to see the little green dot in the lower left. But unless you had a really good angle at your camera, that little dot can be hard to see. So let's listen and see when the beep occurs, and then I know my focus is acquired. Here we go. You'll notice in the upper left, Starry Sky autofocus is running. And there was the audible beep of confirmation. And you can tell that the lights in town are sharper. You can see the stars are sharp up there. Now it's a pretty bright moonlit night, which means my sky is going to look blue. But let's start an image. That is my image stabilizer, information right there. The assist, if you will, that a lot of people don't like. They feel like it takes up space on their camera, but I always leave them on. Church bells ringing in the distance. All right, let's take a look at our image and see if it's sharp. All right, so if we zoom in on the stars, yeah, they look good. Okay. We can go in, let's move down here to town. I mean, you can see the incredible detail there in the foreground. That's Sleeping Lion Mountain. Off to the left is the Fort Davis National Historic Site. It's one of the best preserved forts in the American Southwest. Well, I hope this video has been very helpful in getting you maybe a little more comfortable with Starry Sky autofocus and how to use it in the field. I know filming at night can be challenging. You can't see me, and I didn't want to do a video where I had a light on me and trying to do Starry Sky autofocus, because if I had too much light hitting on the camera, it would reduce the efficiency and the accuracy of Starry Sky autofocus. So I did recordings of the camera screen and tried to add some notes. The beeps just didn't quite show up on my microphone, but I want you to know they're very audible. And I really hope this helps. I'd love some comments down at the bottom if there are other Milky Way or night sky videos you would like. If you have questions about why is the sky blue at that time of night, I tried to explain it in there, but there's a lot of challenging issues when it comes to photographing at night. I will be doing other videos about night sky photography over time. So again, I really want to help you understand some of the core settings for Starry Sky autofocus and how I use it in the field. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Great seeing you again. Get out there and get some great shots. We'll see you next time, guys.